Hey, fancy listeners. Francesca Hampton here, and I am honored that you once again took time to tune in. And as always, I'm committed to sharing content that will make you glad you did. So, welcome to the Fancy Thoughts Podcast, a weekly podcast designed to give you perspective, insight, and encouragement to release the greatness inside of you. I want you to live fancy life, where you are fostering achievement, never compromising you, because someone is waiting for you. Well, it's time for this week's episode. As a reminder, last week, we talked a little bit about self-care with a bit of selfishness. And we also said that our goals should be progression and not perfection. And I believe this week's fancy thoughts are going to align and continue that in that theme. So our first fancy thought is about self-sabotage. We have to be mindful and considerate that we are not sabotaging ourselves. And whether it's intentionally or even unconsciously, it's something that we need to be mindful of so that we don't put ourselves in a position where our own efforts are in direct contrast to the very thing that we want to accomplish. What do I mean by that? Mindtools.com identifies self-sabotage as something that is used as destructive behavior directed at yourself. And when you just even hear that idea, like destructive behavior directed at yourself, it's like purposely punching yourself in the face. No one would actually, hopefully, do that, right? But that's basically what self-sabotage is. Self-sabotage, as defined or sabotage as defined by the Collins Dictionary, is any underhand interference with production, work, etc. So anything that's done to stop moving forward, to stop production, to stop work, to stop our efforts is sabotage. And to think that we can do that to ourselves, we want to make sure we're not doing that. How can one do that? Well, you've heard it a lot. You may have heard it a lot in relationships, for example, where a person gets into a relationship and then self-sabotages the relationship. One of the ways that we can do that is you hear, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, or I'm waiting for their other side to come out, or, this isn't going to work anyway. So I'm just waiting for, the day when this, all falls apart. That is literally self-sabotage. It's an underhanded interference with production, with movement, with work, with an effort. You are waiting, you are putting in the back of your mind that something is going to happen to that's going to stop getting to the goal that you want to get to. Well, that doesn't really help, right? So, how does this relate to us in like our business or in us accomplishing the purpose and the passions that we have? When you get ready to step out into that new venture, when you get ready to be bold enough to go forward in that new business or that new area of your life, if in the back of your head you consistently have this is not going to work, I have no idea how this is going to happen. Nobody's going to want to listen to me. This probably won't even reach anyone. You are self-sabotaging yourself. You are basically telling yourself that you're going to fail before you've even started. And you cannot succeed with that mentality. You cannot move forward if you already don't believe that you can accomplish what you set out to accomplish. One of the greatest things about success is authenticity. When you exude authenticity and belief in yourself, in your product, in your service, and whatever it is that you are putting forth, it draws people in. But when you don't believe in yourself, when you are questioning your own ability, when you are doubting the fact that you can actually accomplish what you're doing, it actually pushes people away. Because if you don't believe in yourself, how can you expect someone else to? Our next fancy thought is change requires growth and growth requires change. I'm going to say that again. Change requires growth and growth requires change. For many people, change is uncomfortable and undesirable. It's under the old concept that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And many people, it makes them very uncomfortable to even consider changing something, especially if it's something that they have been doing for a very long period of time and it looks like and feels like it's working. The challenge with that mindset is that when we get stuck in a particular route or a particular habit or in just a way of doing things, we can become blind to the fact that we need to change. Because the reality is that change is necessary in order for us to accomplish our goals, to continue to succeed, and to progress. The reality is that change is happening all around us. And for us to not change, we'd have to sit still. But even in our sitting still, change is required in order to match or keep up with the way things are going on around us. So the best thing is to embrace change, is to accept change, and also look for ways and areas to change. Now, change requires growth. So let's just take a quick second to look at these two words and their definitions. And for all of our podcasts, for the most part, I will be using the Collins Dictionary. So change is defined as transform or convert or to make or become different. And as we've been talking about, as we are wanting to step out and release the greatness that's on the inside of us, as we want to continue to move in the right direction and allow the things that are on the inside of us to come out, that means that we're transforming, we're becoming different, we're progressing, which requires change. And growth is a stage of development. So in order to be in that next phase of our lives, we have to continue to develop. We have to continue to grow. So in order to reach one, you need the other. So let's take a practical example. I know in my own personal life, there's been a lot of change going on around me. Things that I didn't necessarily ask for and definitely didn't expect. And as I mentioned earlier, change happens all around us with or without our permission. And in order for us to continue to thrive and to continue to progress, change is required on the inside of us. So let's say that that you had a particular job that you were at, right? And there were some changes happening. Maybe there were some leadership changes, or there was some departmental movement that was happening, right? And you had a particular position, and the position's not changing, but maybe perhaps the way that that position operates within the business is changing. You can either stay and say, well, this is my position, this is my job, I've been doing it this way all this time, and it works. There is no need for me to do anything different. But the reality is that there's a different atmosphere that job or that position is now in. And in order for you to be successful in that particular area, change is required. There's a transformation, there's a conversion, there's some things that need to be different. In order for you to make that change, growth is required in you. A stage of development is required in you. You have to change the way you think. Perspective is everything, right? And so you have to be willing to look at things a little bit different, act a little bit different, respond a little bit different so that you are able to succeed in the area that you are now in. It's not about changing who you are. It's about adapting so that you can continue to be successful wherever you are. Now, the other thing that we said in the same statement is that just as change requires growth, growth requires change. In order for you to continue to develop and grow, change is required. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. If you want to grow, if you want the best, you want to be the very best you that you can be. That means that what you were doing 2 years ago may no longer be applicable to the stage you're in today. It doesn't mean what you were doing wrong 2 years ago was wrong. It means it just might not work today. You've grown. Life has changed. Things are different. And you have to be willing to change with them. You have to be willing to grow. You have to be willing to develop, to mature, to continue to be educated and to learn, to continue to mature. Change requires growth, and growth requires change. And for us to release the greatness that's on the inside of us, we have to be open to both. So, it's a quick wrap up of this week's episode, just a reminder that we don't want to self-sabotage. We don't want to do things that are going to purposely be destructive towards ourselves. We don't want to do things that are going to hurt or harm or stifle our own progress. And we have to be open to change, which requires growth. And as we continue to grow, we must be willing to change. Thank you for joining us for the Fancy Thoughts podcast. I look forward to you tuning in again next week. And remember, you are well able, fully capable, and properly equipped to accomplish everything you were created for. So go and make this week a great one.